Joe Biden isn't a big fan of talking to the media. As the Washington Post noted in a story that they posted earlier this week, in his first 2.5 years as president, Biden has held fewer news conferences than his predecessors. He has given fewer interviews to major news organizations, despite his promise to restore traditional press relations after the Trump era. And the numbers cited in that story are pretty striking. Biden has done one interview with a daily print publication, the Associated Press. He has held 13 solo press conferences and 17 joint press conferences, usually with another world leader, so far during his time in office. That is the lowest number since George H.W. Bush's presidency. Biden has sat for a total of 74 media interviews, the fewest since the presidency of Ronald Reagan. Now compare that to his immediate predecessor, Donald Trump, who, despite his attacks in the media, loved to talk to the press. At this point in Trump's presidency, he had held 52 news conferences and granted 273 interviews. Barack Obama had done 69 press conferences and 381 interviews by this time in his presidency. Now, this is, of course, strategic on Biden's part in a few ways. One, the Post notes that Biden has given far more time to influencers, YouTubers, TikTok stars, and the like than past presidents. The coverage he gets from the time he spends with those folks is almost universally positive. And two, Biden is old. Yes, I know I've made that point before. The White House knows this too, and they are doing everything they can to protect him from a blunder or misstatement in an interview that turns into a much bigger story. The question then is not really why the White House is limiting press access to Biden, but whether what they're doing amounts to a successful strategy. Let me briefly make the case that it is in fact not a successful strategy. Biden's approval rating, according to poll averages kept by 538, is 39.6%, while his disapproval score is 53.5%. The Real Clear Politics polling average show Biden running effectively even with Donald Trump in general election trial heats. On issues like the economy, immigration, and foreign policy, a majority of voters disapprove of the approach Biden has taken. Now, you can, of course, argue that A, it's early in the 2024 election, and B, polls at this stage are deeply unreliable, and even C, Biden will be running against Trump, so none of this really matters. And you might be right. But there are increasingly voices in the political world, including the Democratic political world, urging Biden and his team to expose him more to the press and the public than they have been willing to do so far. That drumbeat began with a Maureen Dowd column in the New York Times in September. In it, she wrote this of Biden: "He no longer seems a happy warrior. The Paul who has always relished talking to people, being around people, seems sort of lonely. When he campaigned in a limited, shielded way during COVID, he was dubbed the man in the basement. But now, even without the mask, it's as though he's still hidden away." That sentiment was picked up by Michael LaRosa, a former spokesman for First Lady Jill Biden. "Hang a lantern. Don't hide the ball. Turn weakness into strength," LaRosa tweeted recently. Then, earlier this week, came an op-ed in the New York Times by former Obama pollster Joel Benenson, which sounded many of those same notes, particularly about Biden and the age question. Here's the key bit from Benenson on Biden. "The fact is, he's old. A failure to confront the issue risks reinforcing that impression rather than overcoming it. Americans will be watching him closely in big moments, like his trip to Israel this week, to deal with one of the most significant crises of his presidency. The Biden team needs to get the president out in front of the public more, finding opportunities for him to talk about age with a directness and confidence that convinces people it isn't the core issue. Talk about it now so you aren't talking about it next summer, then use the fall debates in 2024 to deliver a Reagan-esque line that puts the topic to bed." What's clear, at least to me here, is that despite their assertions that it's not an issue, Biden's staff, both in the White House and on the campaign, are acutely mindful of his age and all that goes with it. And they are shielding him from situations in which he might struggle due to his age. That, of course, is likely not sustainable as the 2024 campaign heats up. While Biden was largely able to campaign from close to home in 2020 due to the coronavirus pandemic, there will be an expectation that he keeps a much more active campaign schedule this time around. That's especially true when you consider that Donald Trump, who, not for nothing, is 77 years old himself, seems dead set on making Biden's age and alleged infirmity a central issue of the coming general election campaign. So what? It seems unlikely then that Biden will be able to keep up his strategy of keeping public scrutiny and the press at arm's length. He will have to show and prove that he is up to doing the job he is running for, and that very much includes sitting down with reporters to talk about what he's done and what he hasn't over his first term in office. And who knows? It might actually be a winning strategy for Biden.